So I wanted to make this just because I feel like I've heard it so many times now that it's really getting at me, and I feel like I haven't seen a lot of videos explaining this and why it's wrong. So I kind of wanted to put out my thoughts on it. So, of course, one of the biggest theories in Indiana Jones that's going around, not very recently, but fairly recently, is that Indiana Jones doesn't matter to Raiders of the Lost Ark. And it's such a shallow theory because it comes from The Big Bang Theory, which is a show that personally I haven't watched. But from what I've seen, this just kind of feels like a throwaway line. And obviously it seems like the writers didn't really care too much about actually making sense, and they just really wanted to put in a joke in there, which I don't think is bad. I'm totally fine with it, but I feel like it spreads so much and so fast that it's kind of given itself a little too much truth. And I don't know, I feel like too many people are just kind of watching it. They see that one line and they immediately assume it's true without really thinking about what actually happens in Raiders. So I want to go through and really break down why I believe this theory is pretty much completely incorrect. I'll also go through the other three movies because while I haven't heard it that much, I have heard it from a few people who believe it applies to the other movies as well. Mainly Last Crusade and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but Temple of Doom is kind of obvious, you know. Indy is basically vital to the plot in that one. So I won't talk about Temple, but I will talk about the other three films. With Raiders, obviously people say, if I remember correctly, the line is, if Indiana Jones wasn't in Raiders, the Nazis would have gotten the Ark, taken it to the island, opened it, and all died. And basically the main argument is, if Indiana Jones wasn't in the movie, the Nazis would have just opened the Ark and died anyways. There's a lot of problems with this, so I'll just kind of go in a chronological order of cause and effect to explain why it's so wrong. So starting with one of the smaller MacGuffins of the film is the Staff of Ra headpiece. The amulet that Marion wears, and she kind of hides from both Indy and the Nazis because it means a lot to her. It was her father's. But obviously, the whole story with it is that you need the headpiece to determine where the Ark is. You have to be able to read both sides, and this is a key point in the plot of the movie is Indy saves Marion, and because the Nazis were able to obtain one side of the headpiece, they believed they had enough information to find the Ark. Of course, it was wrong, and since Indy was there to save Marion, he got the full headpiece and was able to find the Ark first. Now, this is one part of the theory that technically is correct. Either way, the Nazis would have gotten a hold of the Ark. If it were the way it happened in the movie, yeah, it just would have happened a little later, because if Indy wasn't there, the Nazis would have probably either tortured and or killed Marion and just taken the headpiece anyways. So either way, the Nazis would have found the Ark. They would have just found it a little faster. So that part I'm okay with. I kind of agree with that part of the theory. But really, after this point, it goes very downhill. So something that not a lot of people understand when thinking about this theory is that the whole end of the movie is determined because Indiana Jones keeps delaying the Nazis' efforts. In the film, we see that Indiana Jones, the Nazis steal the Ark back from him, and they take it to their plane. Now, Indy specifically says when he escapes the Well of Souls with Marion, they're going to fly it out of here. And this is a very important line because they aren't flying it to their island base. they are flying it directly to Berlin because that is their goal. They are trying to find the Ark and bring it back to Berlin to see if they can figure out a use for it. Really, the big problem here is that Indy stops, he blows up the plane and is able to recover the Ark before it gets loaded. And this is very important because it shows that Indiana Jones is delaying their efforts. He's pushing back everything they're doing. After this, we see that they loaded onto a convoy. The truck chase, of course, very memorable scene, very iconic. The lead German, Colonel Dietrich, I believe that's how you pronounce it, he specifically says loaded onto a truck. I want to flown out from Cairo. So basically, they went from flying it out directly to getting it to an airport in Cairo and flying it there. Now, same thing. They aren't just taking it to their island, they're taking it to an actual airport and getting it back to Germany. So, when Indiana Jones stops them and recovers the Ark once more, he is able to get it onto a ship, and they begin sailing back to England. Now, we know this because Indy was talking to Sala about the same time as the plane. Right before the truck chase, he's basically asking Sala for help so he can get transport to England. Now, the important thing here is that Indy has now taken the Ark out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And this is important because when the Nazis recapture the Ark here, they're in the middle of the ocean. It would take a long time for them to take it back to the nearest land, find an airport, and then fly it all the way to Germany. So at this point, Belloc kind of has an upper hand on the Nazis. He wants to, because his goal is to discover what the truth behind the Ark is. He says himself he doesn't really care about the Nazis' goals. He's just kind of using them to help get the Ark. So Belloc kind of uses this opportunity to manipulate the Nazis into saying, hey, maybe we should open the Ark already. We've gone through so much trouble at this point. We might as well open it to make sure it's really what we're looking for. Now, the reason why this is important is because if not for Indiana Jones's constant attempts to delay their efforts, this would not happen. The Nazis would have found it so easily, they would take it directly back to Berlin. So, I believe that addresses most of the problems with the theory, but of course, there's still the question of, well, if they took it back to Germany, it might even be a better solution, because something else I've heard is that the Nazis would have opened it in front of Hitler and it would have killed all of them. Now, of course, I don't really think that would happen. Personally, I feel like, especially since Hitler is going after such a powerful artifact, he himself probably knows the dangers of it. So, sure, I think he would let it be opened in Berlin, but most likely in a controlled facility. If you didn't know, the Nazis were all about experimentation and these, horrible things that would happen. So I hate to say it, but Hitler probably would be very careful with the Ark. And eventually, through years of experimentation, the Nazis would have most likely developed a way to weaponize the Ark. How that they would be able to do it, I don't really know. I feel like if the Ark got to Berlin and it was in the hands of the Nazis, it would pretty much be game over for the entirety of World War II. The Nazis would be all-powerful and probably would have been able to eliminate all of their enemies. Also, I forgot to mention, even if the Nazis had the Ark on the island and Indiana Jones wasn't there, they would have opened it, all died, and then eventually more Nazis would have come and taken the Ark. It's that simple. Like, even if those Nazis opened the Ark, it's like an endless cycle. They would just keep coming for it, and eventually they'd learn their lesson and take it and know not to mess with it. So, just wanted to mention that as well. I want to move on to Last Crusade and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and just kind of briefly run over those, because of course that's not the main point of the theory, but I have heard a lot of people talk about it, so I do want to go over those as well. For Last Crusade, I think the main reason why the theory falls flat is because the key to finding the Grail is Henry Jones Sr. It's his diary. They need, the Nazis, they need information from Henry Jones Sr., and he is not giving it to them. And the only reason why they get to the Grail is because they are basically following Indy's tracks. Indy rescues his dad, and they together follow the clues to get to the Grail. So most likely what would have happened if Indy wasn't there to save his dad, they would have continued to question and or torture him and probably kill him. And they would have zero information, no way to find the Grail, and basically their whole expedition would end. So that's where Last Crusade kind of falls flat. For Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it's kind of the same thing. In the beginning of the movie, the Russians literally use Indy to find the remains of one of the crashed interdimensional being ships. And sure, Indy talks about there were other people with him when he went to first analyze those remains. So yes, they probably could have found someone else, but I think they really went with Indy because, number one, he's the most famous of that group, and he's probably one of the smartest or, cleverest people there. Sure, they probably could have gotten someone else to do it, so let's go with that. Really, the rest of the movie only happens because Indy goes to save Oxley and Marion, and because Indy looks into the eyes of the skull, he doesn't go, cuckoo, but he is still able to interpret and talk with Oxley. The reason why they needed Indy is because they couldn't get anything out of Oxley. So again, the Russians, if they didn't have Indy or anyone else to interpret, they probably would have just given up. And the story pretty much would have ended. Marion probably would have died. So that's where Kingdom of the Crystal Skull falls flat. So, overall, I hope I really helped to clear up everything with this theory and with the 3 movies that it really affects. I hope I was able to fairly debunk it and provide enough evidence to why I think it is pretty much 100% wrong. Of course, please tell me what you think about all this in the comments. Tell me if I missed anything or if there's something that I didn't go over. I'd love to hear about this. I just kind of wanted to post a quick video about this so I could really explain it for the majority of people who haven't really gone through or kind of wanted to know more about this theory in general. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Oh.